Hey guys, welcome back to another great game of CEDH. And maybe some viewers have noticed, or maybe not, but this video doesn't actually have a snappy title. I received some comments that said I was unfortunately spoiling the outcome of the gameplay with the title, so I figured I'd give it a little test to see if it actually matters. So, I need your help. Watch the video and let me know in the comments if not having a title mattered to you. And I guess if no one watched the video, that'll be an answer too. And if you like my silly titles, let me know as well. Also, have you heard the news? Your favorite CEDH YouTube channel has released some cool merch. And if you're interested in picking up some sweet new apparel, come check us out. Also, if you like what you see, consider joining our Patreon, as with your help, we can keep producing the videos you enjoy. And if you want to play with us, hop on our Discord. We have an ever-growing community that loves to talk MTG, or whatever else strikes our fancy. And we would love to meet new people. Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board. Starting us off is Hidden Planet X on Kenrith. This was a list taken off the database and is a mid-range adaptive deck that really wants to outvalue other decks through multiple lines that generate card value. Whether it be Oracle Console, Dockside Mayhem loops, this deck has multiple win conditions, and if needed, Kenrith can gain a lot of card advantage just on his own. Next up is mtga Loots on Timnatana. This deck is what otherwise known as Blood Pod, and is what's known as a Meta Crusher deck. It's a stax deck that is highly customizable to what you want to hate on, and its goal is to grind the game down and gain advantage since you know what stax pieces are coming. Tuned to a specific meta, it can often hold the entire table down, but only if tuned properly. In the third spot, we have Cedh on thrasios tevesh. This is Tentacle Hulk. It's a mid-range combo deck whose goal is to use Natural Order for a Protean Hulk and sack it to tevesh. Also, being in black and blue, you have access to Thassa's, and if you can't combo immediately, you get two different value engines in both thrasios and tevesh, really letting you grind the game away. And bringing up the rear, we have Dragonite on Myrel. This is a mono-white stax deck similar to Zerium. It's basically a mono-white version of Nagila, relying on heavy stax pieces or an aggressive start to really start snowballing creatures and pressure his opponent's life total. And while Zerium has added evasion, Myrel makes up for it with a Grand Abolisher effect that is really useful, especially when you need to be able to stick your stax pieces. But without further ado, let's get on to the gameplay. Hidden starts off the game with an Underground Sea into a Soul Ring, into a Talisman of Resilience, and not done yet, cast an active Mox Opal and a Talisman of Dominance.
Dude, where's my oof?
I'm just like very much hoping an oof does not come out.
Jesus.
Dude, where's my dockside?
Yeah,
Man,
I'm done after that.
Colors, like.
Loots cracks a Verdant Catacombs for a Bayou, and shortcuts to cast the Llanowar Elves. Cedh has a Mystical Confluence and a Mana Crypt, with the Crypt casting a Felwar Stone and him ending his turn casting Thrasios. Dragonite has a quick turn just playing his snow-covered plains. Hidden plays an Exotic Orchard as land and casts his commander Kenrith. He then activates Kenrith with a red and gives him haste and sends him sideways at Cedh for 5. Loots plays a Marsh Flats, cracking it to grab a Savannah, and once again shortcuts to cast an Elvish Mystic, passing while he searches. Cedh is safe from his crypt and plays his own Exotic Orchard, following that up with a Gilded Drake.
Oh.
God dang it.
Said he remembered it. I remember hearing it. I passed party.
Damn.
Yeah. The Drake swaps with Kenrith, and still with a colorless floating, Cedh casts a Sensei's Divining Top. Dragonite has a Cavernous Souls, naming human, and casts a Leonin Arbiter. Hidden untaps and plays a Savannah. Unfortunately, he's low on cards and commanderless. So, looking for answers, he casts a Finale of Devastation for 6, where X equals 2. He pays for the Arbiter, and was surprised to not see a Gilded Drake in the list. But he does find a Phantasmal Image, which is what he ends up grabbing, although he was contemplating Kennen as well. The image does enter as a copy of the Gilded Drake, which tries to swap back Hidden's Kenrith. But dang, is Hidden getting unlucky today, as Cedh responds with the Culling the Weak to sacrifice the Kenrith for 4 black mana, and fizzling the Drake. Hidden is done after that, but Cedh does have a use for the mana as he activates Thrasios to scry one to the bottom. He then puts an Undergrowth Stadium into play. Lutz has an Ancient Tomb as land and casts his own Finale. He also pays for the Arbiter and puts 2 into the X, with Hidden responding with a Swan Song, as he knows the oof is coming out to play. And at his end step, Cedh rearranges the top with his top. Cedh untaps and takes 3 from his crypt. On his main phase, he casts his other commander Tevesh, who upticks for some thralls. Dragonite draws return, but is unfortunately short on lands, and casts a Seal of Cleansing, passing after that. Hidden plays a Misty Rainforest and a Lion's Eye Diamond. He has no other cards in hand and cracks the diamond for triple white to recast his commander, ending his turn with combat as he sends his Gilded Drake at Tevesh for 3. Lutz plays a command tower and casts his commander Tymna. He does take 2 off the tomb and then heads to combat. He sends the Swan at Cedh as he wants the card draw. And on his second main, he pays a life to draw a card and then casts a Fiend Artisan, ending his turn with a Carpet of Flowers, with Cedh once again topping at his end step. Cedh is safe from his crypt and casts a Dauthi Voidwalker. He then upticks Tevesh to sacrifice his Thrall to draw 2, and then chucks in a Breeding Pool, passing after that. Dragonite is finally at least hitting his lands as he plays a Snow-Covered Plains, and then for 3 casts an Adeleine, with Hidden at his end step cracking his Misty for a Bayou. He pays for the Arbiter and then activates Kenrith to put a counter on the Drake. Hidden untaps and plays a Tarnished Citadel as land. He then sends the 4/4 Flying Drake at Tevesh to take the Planeswalker out. Hidden is now not sure what to do. He's unfortunately a little short of mana for what he actually wants to do and has no cards in hand. So he decides to activate Kenrith to bring back his Phantasmal Image. Cedh does have a response as he casts a Noxious Revival to put it back on top. But Hidden has nothing else to do and responds by activating Kenrith again to bring it back. This time the image is reanimated and enters as a copy of the Gilded Drake to take Cedh's Dauthi. Hidden is relying on his deck recurring things as a way to stay in this game, and hopes that the Leonin Arbiter will keep Lutz's Fiend Artisan in check for the time being. Also, the Noxious does get exiled due to the Dauthi. Lutz untaps and heads to combat. He sends the Swan back at Cedh and pays a life to Tymna to draw a second card on his second main. He also activates his Carpet for a black mana, and uses that mana to help cast the Mayhem Devil. He plays a Mana Conflux as land, and then goes under the tank to figure out what his plan is. He ultimately decides to activate his Fiend Artisan, and sacrifices his Elf to trigger his Devil, and also pay for the Arbiter. Overall, he puts 3 into the X. Lutz then picks off the Thrall with the Devil trigger, with Cedh then responding to the tutor by activating Thrasios. He keeps and then reveals a Tropical Island, but lets the tutor go through. And while Lutz did put 3 into the X, he realizes Dockside does a lot to this board, and decides to go with that. Cedh does respond to the ETB by activating the top to put it on top, and the Dockside ends up giving Lutz 7 treasures. And with all these treasures, Lutz decides just to hold back and give the turn to Cedh. Cedh takes 3 from his crypt and then recasts his top, following that up with an Arcane Signet and ending his turn with a Flooded Strand as land. Dragonite is luckily finding his lands as he plays another Snow-Covered Plains and then casts a Grasp of Fate. There is quite the debate on what Dragonite should target. There were arguments for Dockside, Mayhem Devil, and Fiend Artisan from Lutz, with the table not sure what the correct target is. But the enchantment does resolve and Dragonite targets Kenrith, Fiend Artisan, and Thrasios, with Cedh responding by activating Thrasios. He scries a Force to the top and the Grasp resolves, with Hidden and Cedh both having their commanders go back to the command zone. Although if Hidden wasn't empty-handed, he did debate on leaving the commander there, as it was getting pretty pricey to cast. Dragonite then heads to combat and sends his Arbiter at Hidden and Adeleine at Cedh. He triggers Adeleine to get him an additional human tapped and attacking at each player as well. Hidden can't block, with Cedh chumping the Adeleine with his Phantasmal Image Gilded Drake, and Lutz actually eats the human with his Tymna to gain a little extra life. Hidden untaps and draws something very useless, and spends his turn recasting his commander, Kenrith, with Lutz at his end step cracking 2 treasures for green, and pinging the Dothy twice. Hidden does respond by sacrificing his Dothy to cast the exiled Noxious Survival to put the finale back on top. This also actually does trigger the devil again, with Lutz taking out a human. And still at his end step, Lutz then channels up his Seiju to destroy the grasp, and Hidden now really wished he kept Kenrith under there. But the grasp is destroyed, and Dragonite was really happy to go and grab a land, until he realized the Arbiter stops him from searching too. Lutz untaps and triggers his carpet for 2 white mana, following that by shocking in a Temple Garden. 2 treasures then get him 2 black mana and 2 Mayhem Devil triggers. This then takes out the Arbiter. And with the Arbiter gone, he activates his Artisan to tutor out a 5-drop, with Cedh responding by cracking his Flooded Strand to grab a Sunken Hollow. Lutz then searches out a Kiki Jiki, which taps to create a new hasty copy of the Artisan, which he can then activate again to grab his Felidar Guardian. And with that, he can create an infinite number of hasty cats to take the table out.
Alright.
Alright,
GG's.
he does prove that 13 mana and a tutor will win you the game.
Yep.
Well, thank
13
God
mana
for
and a
that.
creature birthing pod.
Game review. Well, that was a good match. I guess knowing the end result, Hidden probably should have Gilded Draked away Lutz's Fiend Artisan and not Cedh's Dothy. Although with Lutz having the Mayhem Devil in hand, Hidden really didn't know that wouldn't work out. And unfortunately for Hidden, he also didn't draw any other value engine, and had to rely on Kenrith. And when you get Gilded Draked and then removed with a Grasp of Fate, having to spend all of his resources just recasting him really put him out of the game. And on the opposite side, Dragonite didn't hit the mana he needed to keep up with the table's fast start. And while his Arbiter did help slow a few things down, it wasn't enough to unfortunately keep him in the game. I think overall, Lutz did a great job of keeping himself in the game and not showing himself until it was too late for the table to stop him. But thanks to everyone that played, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I just wanted to let you know that we have a TCG affiliate link, and if you ever see a card you want to try or are inspired to brew something new, use our link when purchasing and we'll receive a small portion of the sale. This is a great way to support the channel, and if you enjoyed the gameplay, please leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps us keep making videos. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.